I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be fear, anger, stress, and PTSD. Well, that's a mouthful. I've got a lot of quotes. We're going to have to obviously talk about anger and stress, and I've got an email here from a guy who was in the Army, got wounded when he was in Iraq, and he's had PTSD, been suffering from that, and it's created a lot of problems, understandably, obviously, in his relationship with his former girlfriend, who he has a child with. And so he's obviously trying to cope with all these different things. And so we're going to talk about anger and fear and stress and how they're all related. And as I've said before, whenever a person gets angry, what you got to understand is behind anger is always fear. And if you've ever looked into network chiropractic care, like I talk about, and I highly recommend in my article, How to Become More Confident and Sure of Your Actions, I really go into depth and explain network chiropractic care. But basically, the base of your brain, where your spinal cord connects, that tends to deal with the fight or flight type of response and how people react. And the center of your brain tends to deal more with your brain's awareness and connection to all your body and its internal organs. And the frontal lobe of the brain tends to do, which most people hardly ever use, tends to do with accessing the heart, coming from the heart area of the body, for pursuing your purpose, pursuing things that are emotionally compelling to you, living your life authentically from your heart, being able to be present in the moment as opposed to being always worried about what may or may not happen in the future, or being stuck in the past and focusing on things that have happened that you have no control over. And the interesting thing about network care that I've learned, because I've spent probably close to $30,000 over the past decade of my life going to retreats and getting network care, because obviously some of the retreats are $4,000 and $5,000 a piece for a week. But it's incredibly life-changing. And the interesting thing is that for all human beings, when you have physical stress in your life, or you have emotional stress, maybe you grow up in a family where you're yelled at all the time, or you're punished all the time, or you're spanked all the time, those stresses literally over time become locked into your nervous system. And what happens is, as you become older, your body literally gets structurally and physically locked into a stress state all of the time. So, like when you look at soldiers that go and they endure heavy combat, where they're constantly under threat of death, or they're seeing their friends and buddies get wounded all the time, just seemingly, because what happens is you see friends and buddies of yours getting shot and killed, or blown up, or severely wounded, and you're thinking, that dude had so much to live for, and he has so much going for him. It's like, why does shit like that happen to him? Or the guy that's supposedly doing everything he's supposed to survive and get through it, all of a sudden, right before he's about to go home, gets blown up and killed. And those things happen. And so a soldier not only is sometimes deals with survivor guilt, but literally when you're under a very stressful situation, like being in constant contact or getting blown up or bombs going off, because I've had a lot of friends and family have experienced this for generations, being involved in combat and losing friends or personally becoming wounded. It's very difficult to deal with that. I mean, when, like my uncle, when he came back, or when he went through Vietnam, he was one of only 2 guys that came back from his unit. And like one of the experiences he was telling me about, there were mortars coming in, and so he was diving into a foxhole, and the guy behind him, the radio operator, got hit with the majority of the blast from the mortar, and it took off his arms, his legs, and his head. And so as my uncle's diving into his foxhole, he gets hit with what he thought was a tree branch from the explosion. And when he turned around, he realized it was the headless, armless, legless torso with the radio pack still attached to it of the radio guy that he'd been talking to a few moments before. And you can imagine when the body is ripped apart like that and ripped open, what you're going to be covered in. And you don't have time to stop and clean off your buddy's brains off your body, or his innards off of you. It's like when you're under constant threat of death yourself. And it's like when shit like that happens, how do you deal with that? How do you come back and tell your family about that? How do you come back and tell your friends about that stuff? And as men, because society teaches we're supposed to hold all this stuff inside, men aren't supposed to show emotions. And so what happens is you go through stressful situations like this, or you get into a car accident, whatever it happens to be, and this stuff literally gets locked in your physiology because you never embrace the emotions. You're never authentically present with your emotions like children are, and how children authentically express emotions, and they move right through it. And so these things literally build up, and so like a soldier comes back from a stressful time, they're literally locked into the base of their brain, which is all fight or flight response. And so they don't ever take time to talk about things or deal with it. It's like a pressure relief valve on a water heater that never goes off when the pressure expands beyond what it was designed for. And sometimes people snap. Sometimes people they don't know how to deal with it. And it brings up a lot of things for people. And if you're dating, it's like the same kind of stress state. If you're dating a girl and you grow up in a family where, like mine, for instance, and so you're worried about losing the person because deep down you think you don't really deserve that person in life. And so you're always in a stressed state. You're always in a fearful place that this person is going to leave you because of all the emotional traumas that you've experienced in your life. You're literally like locked into that. And the beauty of what I love about network care is it just releases all that stuff. It releases all the tension. And when the tension goes away, your brain moves back to a healthy state where you're not in a stressed state all the time. You're in a relaxed, peaceful place where you can take things in and not just explode all the time or be upset. And it's an amazing healing modality. So I got a couple quotes that I want to share. I'm going to go through this email real quick. And there's one thing that I want to say about anger and fear, and it's like everybody's always projecting what's inside of them. And so this first quote I want to share with you is, no one will ever do or say anything that isn't a direct reflection of how they feel about themselves in a moment. And the second one is, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. And this one is by Mark Twain. Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. And so when we become angry and upset, or when we're in a stress state, it also causes the fluids in our body to turn acidic. I mean, literally, the body is a physical manifestation of the mind's thoughts about itself. And so if you have negative, stressful thoughts, you're constantly filling your body full of poison and acid because it's just simply reacting to the thoughts and your beliefs about life and what's going on. And so with those caveats in mind, let's go through this email. He says, okay, here's my story. I worked with this girl in the same store, but we could only see each other every now and then and talk. And I could tell that she liked me, but she had a boyfriend of many years, and I'm not the kind of guy to jump into that. He says, well, 2 months later, I joined the Army at the age of 25, and before I shipped out to basic, I ran into her at work. And she said she broke up with her boyfriend and was moving downstate to her sister's place. So I did not talk to her for almost 2 years, and then I was in Iraq. I got an ad on Facebook from her, and we started to talk, and we hit it off. And when I came home for leave, we hung out almost the whole time, and we fell for each other. Then I went back to Iraq, and it was going really well for the most part. Well, my truck got hit with an RKG. I don't know if you've ever seen those. Those are like, if you ever saw the potato masher grenades that the Germans used in World War II, it kind of looks like that. It's Russian-made, and when you throw it, it has a little parachute that comes out of the back. It's a shaped charge, and it's meant to penetrate armor. And I've seen videos of insurgents in Iraq throwing those at Humvees, and they're very deadly and they're very effective because a shaped charge is enough to penetrate the armor. So he says that he got hit with an RKG, and 2 of my guys in my truck were really hurt, and I was really hurt in my lower back, but thank God no one was killed. By the way, thank you for your service, brother. I appreciate you. He says, well, after that, I started to have problems with jealousy and paranoia and not sleeping and a lot of other emotional problems, but she stuck with me for the most part. And so the interesting thing is you have a physical trauma that happens to you in your life, and you're literally, you physically get locked into a stress state. And so it causes you to react more angrily and snap at people because it's like you're always keyed up. You're always in that fight or flight response to everything. And you see how it affects your relationships and how normally you were cool and calm, and you go through this stressful experience, and then your brain literally gets locked into this. He says, then one night she went out with a friend, and after that she started to act really funny. And yes, I felt it and started to get even jealous, and come to find out she kissed a guy but came clean to me. Well, it all went downhill with me having PTSD and my back fucked up, and I could not control myself. I would get mad for no reason. I say it's like you chose not to control yourself, because at the end of the day, you had emotions and things inside of you that you needed to talk about, you need to get out. And that's why I think it's really great when vets go and go get counseling and talk about it, as opposed to, just, hey, here's a pill, take this, and stuff it down inside you, because it doesn't do anything to relieve the emotional trauma. That's why you got to talk about it. Get together with your buddies and talk about it, express it, feel whatever emotions are behind it, because when you do, you'll cry, you'll get upset, you'll get angry, whatever, and you'll be able to move past the pain. Just like a child does. In essence, you want to experience your emotions like a child does, authentically is what I'm saying. And you do it in the comfort of your own home, in your bedroom, whatever it has to be, and it enables you to move through it. You got to feel it to heal. That's what my network doctor always says to me every time I see him. You got to feel it to heal it. So he says, anyways, she got pregnant, and then she broke it off with me, and then 9 months later, we had a son. And he says, well, I was trying to be in my son's life at the start, and it took a year before the courts started to let me see my son. Well, I started to get him, and then I was dumb, and I left his life for a year, and he's 2 now. And he says, so then her and I started to hang out a lot, because she wants me to come over there to be with our son at her house. And so, my PTSD has passed. I feel 100% better with no emotional problems. Awesome for you for getting help and taking care of that. He says, one night we had a family movie night, and it was her idea because she said she likes the feeling of family things, and my son fell asleep, so she took him to bed. Well, I stayed there, and after a minute, so I asked to cuddle, and one thing led to another, and we had sex. That's awesome. See, what you're doing is like you went back to the old guy that you were before all this shit happened. Hang out, have fun, and hook up. I say it all of the time. And that's all you really need to do. That's how you rebuild a relationship. Because you're no longer being the person that you were that caused the relationship to fall apart. And you're basically getting back to the really cool guy that she fell in love with in the beginning. And that's what you have to do more of. That's what you need to focus on. You don't need to focus on getting back together or getting her to take you back. He says, well, my feelings for her have not changed at all. And I asked her about us getting back together. But she said, I know that you've forgiven me for the past, but she is not. And has to think about things. All you got to understand is that just means she's not ready to commit to you yet. And just like I say in my book, women fall in love slowly over time. And you can't rush the process. Obviously, because everything that's happened, she's fallen out of love with you. So you got to look at it. Even though you got a past and a history with her and you have a child together, romantically, your relationship, in essence, is like you're just, in essence, going out for a first date. Because of where her emotions are. And the only way you can get her to get back to the place where she once was, hang out, have fun, hook up. Do it over and over and over again. And let her slowly come to you. She should be doing 70 to 80% of the calling, texting, and pursuing. So you got to make sure that ratio changes here. He says, I still think of the past and can't get it out of my head. He says, I don't know what I should... So here's the thing is, you got to let the past go. The fact that she kissed another guy, I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't date your girlfriend or your wife, some other dude eventually will. And so what basically happened in a nutshell was you stopped doing the things that caused her to fall in love with you. And not only on top of that, but you started being an asshole to her, which made her feel even worse and drove her away. But at the end of the day, you guys hung out, you had fun, and you had sex despite everything that's happened. And that is the guy that she needs. That's the guy that she wants to be there for her son. That's the guy that she'll fall back in love with. And that's the guy that you need to focus and bite your tongue when you feel angry or pissed off or you want to go back or to being worried or jealous, because at the end of the day, the only person that's going to drive her into the arms of another man is going to be your actions. And the best thing you can do is show up and be her best option in her life. When she reaches out to you, just keep doing what you're doing. Hanging out, have a glass of wine, make dinner together, do family kinds of things, and hook up. Hang out, have fun, and hook up. Do that over and over and over again. But you got to make sure that she's doing 78% of the calling, texting, and reaching out to you and initiating. And I highly encourage you to read my book. Go to my website, download it. There's a link right underneath the email sign-up box. And I will talk to you soon.